Good evening to all of you. This is Piyush. So now this is day 2 for daily answer writing program for history optional. And today's question is, the Ramayana and Mahabharata as Indian epics offer the rich narrative that provide insight into the social, political and cultural life of ancient India. Analyze the value of these epics as sources of historical information and discuss the challenges of using them as reliable historical records. So if you'll see the key ideas or the words that have been given in this question, in that case, Ramayana and Mahabharata, or let's say epics. This is one part. The second is it is offering us rich narrative that provide insight into the social, political and cultural life. So after this we can say that the way the question is asking how come these epics are helping us to reconstruct the political, social and cultural life of ancient India. And then it also asks basically that what are the different challenges while using them as source of history. Now this is the question. Now let's see how to frame this answer. So first of all, when it comes to introduction, in the introduction you need to include most of the important or the valuable things for this. So you need to write about Ramayana and Mahabharata as epics, and at the same time you have to discuss some of the basic features of it, such as in which category it falls. So this is the Smriti literature, it is in Kavya format. It gradually groomed or evolved between 5th century BC to 4th century CE. Ramayana was written by Valmiki and Mahabharata was written by Ved Vyas. So these are some details which are needed. You can even mention about the Treta Yuga or the Dwapar Yuga. It depends that whether you have time or not. But then these information what I had been discussing, they are the must information or they are the most necessary information. Now it comes to body parts. So as you can see that the question had been divided into two parts. So the first part was saying about using them as source of history. So as I told you that whenever these kind of questions are coming, you need to classify the information into certain categories. And the categories what we had been discussing in the first question could be very much applicable to here also. So we can talk about in the first we'll be writing, in the first point we'll be writing the political structure and kingship. So Mahabharata and Ramayana both provide information, the various information pertaining to political structure and the polity of that period. So within this political structure, you'll be writing first of all depiction of the monarchical system, right? So it basically deals with the kingship, kingdoms, rulers, the political structures, right? It also provides this, also provides information on various dynasties such as Kuru dynasty or Panchal dynasty, and so that's how these kind of things are being discussed. Okay, then it comes to another very important aspect which is being discussed is the theory of kingship, because if you'll see Ramayana and Mahabharata, in that case you'll find that there is different theory of kingship is being provided. There is a concept of Raj Dharma, and that you can understand, and how come the idea of monarchy was transforming from Ramayana's period to the Mahabharata period, that also could be understood. So in fact that idea of transformation what we had been discussing in the first question can be even applied to this part also. Apart from this, it is also telling us about basically the diplomacy and warfare, specifically when it comes to the reference of Krishna in Mahabharata war. So there Krishna can be dealt in this way, ki this person had been providing a sort of diplomacy, providing information on diplomacy and warfare. So even these kind of things are also understood from the Mahabharata, to a certain extent you can say even ki Ramayana was also having these kind of concepts. The second thing that we can talk about within this particular point itself is about the military organization and warfare. Ramayana and Mahabharata both are known for two important wars, and in both the wars ultimately we can understand about the science of war which can be further noticed in Dhanurveda, and that's how it is one of the important branch of knowledge that we also come across through this. Okay, moving to the next point, this is about the social structure. Now when it comes to the social structure, again there are multiple information that could be provided. So again I'll say that classify them into a proper into a proper way. So first of all, if we'll talk about the Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are providing information on Varna system. In fact, if it is about Mahabharata, Mahabharata is categorically providing the information on various varna, and in fact the various duties which were associated with these varnas, they are also categorically discussed. There was one scholar that's called as Wendy Doniger. Wendy Doniger is categorically writing about that how these epics are helping us in order to extract the social information. There is another aspect which is being discussed beautifully in Ramayana and Mahabharata, that is about the status of women. Now, in Ramayana and Mahabharata, there are some powerful and important women characters were there, and through these characters, the historians do try to extract the status of women during the Ramayana period and the Mahabharata period. You can refer the mythical characters like Sita. You can talk about Kunti. You can even refer Draupadi. So that's how, by giving the information of these women, you can say that it is providing us good information about the status of women in this particular period. Then the next aspect which comes in, that is about the religious and philosophical ideas. There was another scholar that he is called as J.L. Brockington, and specifically J.L. Brockington talks about that how come Ramayana and Mahabharata do help us in order to understand the evolution of religion. Undoubtedly they are falling in the category of religious texts, and that's why it's quite obvious that they would provide these kind of information. But then what sort of information we do get? So first of all, it talks about the various paths of getting salvation. So such as it talks about bhakti, which is there in Bhagavad Gita. It talks about karma, which is again there in Bhagavad Gita. It is even dealing with the concept of moksha. So all these important concepts are being discussed. At the same time, it also tells us about basically the transition which was happening from one period to another period, and the transition as in the kind of religious concept that you see in Ramayana period and then in Mahabharata period. It also tells us about basically the transition happening in the religion, such as the avatar concept which is coming. So you should definitely mention this avatar concept, because in both the texts you see that in Ramayana, Rama was considered to be avatar or incarnation of Vishnu. In Mahabharata, it is Krishna, which is considered as incarnation. So that incarnation does have great significance in history, because that somehow helps us to understand the gradual evolution of Hinduism or Brahmanism. In that regard, it remains very important. Apart from that, it is even providing us information about various Puranic deities, the deities which were popular at that point of time. So that's how it does provide certain information on religious aspects also. Then it comes to economic aspect. Again, that is a very important aspect. So when it comes to the economic aspect, so again you can understand the transition through this. Specifically when it comes to Mahabharata, in Mahabharata there is clear-cut reference of basically the transition in agriculture, the way the lands were being donated and in fact being given to the Pandavas, and the way they have been trying to clear the land and start the practice of agriculture, that actually give us that insight that how the agriculture was being started in a new region. So that's how it is providing us information on agriculture and various things related to agriculture. It even provides information on trade and commerce, because in Mahabharata and Ramayana, specifically again I'll say in Mahabharata, there is ample amount of information where the various traders, various craftsperson are being discussed. So that's how we understand what were the popular craft practices during that period of time, how the traders were being treated at that point of time, what are the privileges they had been enjoying. At the same time, both the texts have been dealing with the various cities and the way archaeological profiles have cleared the existence of these cities. So that's how now we are pretty sure that these cities were existing at that point of time. So that was also one aspect which is being revealed by them. There's another part in the economy that we can talk about is basically gift economy. So the way at that point of time gifting of land or some other valuable stuff used to be very popular. So that is somehow telling us about that gifting economy that could be also discussed. Next, we can talk about some cultural and artistic expression. So when it comes to cultural, specifically we can talk about the various value system. We understand the various values being practiced in the society, such as in Mahabharata, the yoga system is being discussed. Now that is how we understand these kind of practices were there in that particular period. So that tells us that how the value system were there in different period, and most importantly how these value systems were transforming from one period to another period. It does provide even information on various festivals and fairs also. So that can be also mentioned. Next, we can write about basically the geographical information. So in Ramayana and Mahabharata, both various topography of India or the various geographical features of India are being discussed. So undoubtedly these are also quite helpful to understand the geographical condition in history. So these are certain positive things that we can, certain positive features that we can discuss, and in fact by these 6-7 points could be included here in order to show ki, yeah, this is how Ramayana and Mahabharata, or let's say epics, are helping us to understand the history. But then, as usual, being a religious literature, there are certain limitations as well. Since the question is asking about the limitations now in form of challenges, and that's why again in certain points we have to discuss about certain challenges which were there. So among the challenges, first of all, we will be writing ki this is religious or mythical in nature. So nowhere it is being claimed ki this is how exactly the things have happened. Now undoubtedly it is a debate, because there are certain scholars, they do believe ki the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are not mythical, rather they exactly happen. But in a broader academic circle, it is being believed that these were mythical and they were religious in nature, and that's how it creates a sort of a problem. The sense of time is again missing. So you know that nowhere they have been mentioning the time period exactly. The way they had been dealing with the Treta Yuga and Dwapar Yuga, that is not quite helpful. So that's why we can say the sense of time was missing. The next we can say the problem with the authorship is also there, or authorship is not very clear, because as you all know that Ramayana and Mahabharata evolved in a longer period of time, and that's how we cannot fix the name of one person as author or the writer of this book. So that is also creating problem. Then you can talk about the extrapolation. So that remains a problem that we have already discussed in question 1, that what is extrapolation, because whenever that any text is being compiled in a larger span of period, in that case the several changes do appear. So the same is true for Ramayana and Mahabharata also. Then we can talk about the Brahminical perspective. Undoubtedly, they were also written by Ramayana and Mahabharata were written by the Brahmins, and that's how the Brahminical perspectives are very clear, specifically when it comes to understanding the society through Ramayana and Mahabharata. So we can understand, or we can see these Brahminical biases. So these are certain limitations. In fact, one more point that you can talk about, that's about the composition and compilation. So probably the early versions were written pretty early, and then after much extrapolation, the final compilation is taking place slightly late, and that's how we can say that remains another problem. So that's how we can list these problems as the challenges what historians do face when it comes to using Ramayana and Mahabharata as a source of history. Correct? Now, towards the end, what we are supposed to do, first of all, we can refer certain historians, and by referring those historians, we can highlight the importance of Ramayana and Mahabharata. We can even highlight or write about certain scholars, those who have been highlighting the challenges while using Ramayana and Mahabharata as source of history. So I think we can quote both sort of historians. So when it comes to Romela Thapar, now what is the key idea that she has been providing? She is saying that actually when it comes to understanding the transition in Indian society, specifically from the tribal to monarchical system, from a tribal social system to a monarchical social system, right? So this we understand. So this we understand through the Vedas. So this is the most important part that she has highlighted. When it comes to A.L. Bossum, so he is highlighting that negative part, that basically it's quite it is mythological in nature, and that's how the historicity is slightly less in this particular text, and that brings the challenges in using them as source of history. But yet he highlights certain positive things, such as he talks about that notion of kingship, right, the social duties and some other things that we understand through this particular text. Okay. Now D.D. Kosambi understands this particular text or these two texts as or in the socio-economic context. So he basically tries to relate the socio-economic changes which were happening during this period, and that's how he tries to somehow express that what might be the condition of society and economy at that point of time, and he relates these kind of things with the other dimensions also. That is the Marxist perspective. Among them, the most important that you can't dare to miss, that is basically B.B. Lal. Now B.B. Lal is basically an archaeologist, and what is the significance of this person? He has been trying to find the archaeological evidences for Ramayana and Mahabharata, and in fact, as you all know, that there were many of the sites of Mahabharata were excavated, and B.B. Lal is one of the most important person in the excavation, and that's how he had been trying to prove the historicity of Ramayana and Mahabharata with the help of these archaeological excavations, and that is somehow making it more concrete that it is highly probable that these stories, maybe not in the same form, maybe in some limited form, might have taken place. That's the significance of this person. Again, it comes to Selden Pollock. Selden Pollock is very important. Do you know why? Because in the last class also I had been discussing, in the last question discussion also, we had been discussing about Selden Pollock. Selden Pollock is talking about basically a very different perspective, and he talks about that expression of the imperial imagination during the Gupta period. So he tries to make a sort of parity with the Gupta period, and that's how he tries to understand the political context of that period, specifically of Ramayana. That's the significance of it. Now there is another scholar from Maharashtra, that's called as V.S. Sukhtankar, right? So this person is saying that actually they are not static narratives, and that's how it is not only providing information for one period, rather it is actually telling us about a very good, it is giving a very good description of social and cultural transformation over the time. That's a very good statement to sum up your answer. Why? Because it is the way it is telling us about the transition happening in the society, since it is compiled in a, or composed and compiled in a longer period. So that's how this person is this person is saying ki we can understand that transformation, social and cultural transition, with the help of Vedas. Okay. In fact, there is one more scholar. That scholar we have earlier also discussed. That scholar is Wendy Doniger. The Wendy Doniger is saying ki actually we can understand even the psychological complexities of that period with the help of the various characters which are there in Ramayana and Mahabharata, and that shows the complexity which was there in the society. So either if you have used this particular scholar even in the body part, in that case it is okay, if you use it in the conclusion or not. So whatsoever scholars I did tell you, it's not necessary that you have been using all of them. By picking up couple of them, you can actually conclude your answer. Romila Thapar is very important. Then I told you that person Romila Thapar is very important. Then A.L. Bossum is very important, right? Then B.B. Lal is undoubtedly very important. These three scholars are very important. So I think instead of mentioning everyone, you can include these two, three, and that's how we'll be concluding the answer. And the conclusion would remain same. They are undoubtedly very valuable source, but then if we juxtapose them with some other available sources, in that case we come across a better history or a better sort of narrative for that particular period, and that's how they are quite helpful for writing the history of the periods in which Ramayana and Mahabharata were composed and compiled. That's how you have to sum up your answer. So that's all about today's question. Thank you very much.